bit late, so hopefully you guys, we didn't lose anybody. But we're here. I'm your Pets Life coach, and I'm here tonight with Dr. Robin Canizero. She's out of Florida. Dr. Canizero is a holistic, homeopathic, amazing veterinarian, and she's going to be here to answer some of your questions if you have any questions. I always recommend if you want to kind of learn a little bit about homeopathy. I did a podcast with Dr. Richard McCarran, who kind of gives you the rundown on it. So it's kind of gives you it, but Dr. Canizero is here in case you have any like further deeper questions. But if you really want to dive into it, Dr. McCarran did such a wonderful job of that. But Dr. Canizero can kind of help you a little bit if you get a little bit lost. I'm still learning about homeopathy, so I can't help you there. But Dr. Canizero is one of very, very few homeopathic veterinarians in this country. We were talking offline a little bit about how hard it is to find these vets. So we are very blessed to have Dr. Canizero because she is so free with her time to be here tonight. So I just want to welcome you, Dr. Canizero, to the show tonight. How are you?
Well, thank you so much, Carrie. I really appreciate it. And I really enjoy doing these podcasts with you. And I really appreciate that you take the time. I love being able to educate the public. I think it's crucial because you don't need to make an appointment with someone like myself who charges by the hour. I want to give back to the community by being able to do this kind of work at no charge, no cost. While it doesn't solve every question and every answer to everybody's question on how to treat and fix their animal, I couldn't do that in a podcast, but I appreciate everybody being here and Carrie really stretching out and doing this because it's a big deal. If you want to know more about homeopathic medicine, I would strongly, strongly advise you to read a wonderful little book called Beyond Flat Earth Medicine. And it's written by a human MD, an MD, well, obviously human is, that's human doctor, and his name is Dr. Michael Dooley, Dooley. And he writes an absolutely amazing little 100-page book that is easy read for any audience whatsoever. And it's a fantastic little reference. So if you want to just dig a little bit deeper and say, well, I want to understand about that, you can listen to Dr. Pitcairn, who is wonderful. And his book is fantastic too. I recommend that, Natural Health for Dogs and Cats. Both of these books are referenced on my website in case anybody's interested. But I really encourage you to do that because knowledge is power. And if you have knowledge about something that you're not sure about, you're not sure you understand it, it'll give you an opportunity to be able to educate yourself and say, wow, this really speaks to me. I really want to do this. I want to find a homeopathic vet. So, and the homeopathic veterinarians are the most holistic veterinarians you're going to find. We're the fewest in the country, unfortunately. And Carrie and I were talking about integrative and quote holistic veterinarians, which we coin as holistic. And they're not bad veterinarians, but they're not holistic vets. If they're offering you antibiotics and steroids or Apoquel or Cytopoint or flea and tick poisons or antibiotics, well, we better use antibiotics first or in addition to. They're not holistic. These are integrative veterinarians who are allopathic, traditional veterinarians who are offering some holistic modalities. And I know I bring this up a lot in the podcasts, and many of you have maybe had an experience like that, but you don't deserve to be deceived into thinking that you're actually going to a holistic veterinarian and then thinking, well, okay, they're holistic, so if they're recommending antibiotics, it must be really necessary. So no,
That's
it's not.
Happens. That's what happens. That's what I was telling Dr. Canizero before we came on. I'm writing an article right now called "Stop Looking for the Holistic Vet" because it's just there are so many holistic vets in this country. There's tons of them now. They're on every street corner. They're all holistic. But we're shutting our brains off when we walk into the holistic veterinarian. And so to Dr. Canizero's point is, if you can find a homeopathic vet, now you're going to have a true holistic vet, because there's no way those two you cannot be a homeopathic veterinarian and truly understand homeopathy and not be holistic, is what Dr. Canizero was saying. So that's the big key. So now
you know why there's such an explosion of these holistic vets.
Because people desperately want holistic, but they don't
People
understand.
want holistic, but they don't quite understand what it is that they're getting. So the vets are like, okay, well, I'll add a little bit of these modalities. Now I'll call myself holistic and draw in all of you folks that are like, oh my goodness, there's a holistic vet in my area.
Yeah.
or within 20 minutes drive or something like that. We
Oh,
know as veterinarians that when we learned from the people that do all of the mapping and figuring out why people do what they do or go where they go, the majority of clientele will go to the veterinarian that's closest to them.
right.
I
Oh,
think the times are
for sure.
changing in that people are still desiring to go to veterinarians close to them, but they're becoming a bit more critical, I think, and feedback from my clients, I'll say, that's where I'm getting the information from, where they're like, okay, well, that one's close, but I went and I was really uncomfortable with how it went. And I'm not talking about necessarily a holistic vet, I'm talking about even an allopathic veterinarian. So the criteria that I would say to you is make sure your veterinarian, whether they are holistic or whether they are allopathic, make sure you feel comfortable with that veterinarian. You feel like you're being listened to and heard. If you feel pressure to do something, that should be a red flag for you. Now, I'm going to say, and I saw a case today where my client had limited funds. She's just in a difficult time in her life, and she wasn't able to purchase all of the supplements that I really felt were going to be beneficial for her dog. So all I said was, gosh, I really think this is important, but I think we could wait on the blood work because if she gets better, then we're okay postponing blood work or her annual checkup. If you can't go in and have a dialogue with your veterinarian, her dog was overdue for an annual checkup. I could have just read her the riot act. Well, you got to do the annual checkup and you got to do all this. But her pet has an illness that has returned that needs to be addressed. And how can we most effectively address it? She didn't go home with all of the natural medicines I wanted her to, but I'm not going to make her feel guilty about it. And at one point, I dispensed a little bit of an open package of a probiotic that I had. She didn't want to buy the whole package. And I said, you might be able to find it less expensive online. I'm not attached to whether somebody saves some money online with a product that I happen to carry in my office. I want the pet to get better, and that'll be my commitment. And I'll tell you my strong feeling about what I think is important, but I'm going to be honest about it. And I just said to her, listen, if things aren't going really well, just call me up because I can put that additional supplement out in the box for you to pick up, and you can leave your cash or check in the box and pick it up at your leisure. So we need to offer you and hear you because I don't know how much money she has. It's none of my business how much money. If she's in a difficult space and maybe she has less than I even imagine she has, I don't know.
Right.
It's not my business. I'm here to do the best I can for the pet. You have to work with a veterinarian that is going to hear you, listen to you, and try to work with you. And if someone is pressuring down your throat to do something, that's a red flag, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I don't think people realize, but a holistic vet can literally do nothing holistic and just give like milk thistle and then consider themselves holistic and do nothing else. Like everything else is exactly like allopathic, but they happen to have milk thistle around, which seems to be the one thing that even the most like conventional vet will have in their they'll have milk thistle in their office, and
Well,
then
as
they
soon as there's a couple published studies, then the allopathic veterinarians will be like, "Oh, okay, I'll do that."
yeah, I'll do
Um,
that
and
because
some allopathic veterinarians are starting to carry standard process supplements, which
yeah,
I dispense a lot of.
yeah,
But it's all because standard process was able to kind of get into the niche of allopathic medicine. And, let's not lie to one another. I mean, a company wants to sell more of their medicines and it does no harm. So the good news is that maybe the allopathic veterinarian will hand you a bottle of standard process supplement. They're probably also going to give you some other junk that isn't a good idea for your pet. But I would recommend finding a homeopathic, holistic veterinarian if you can and if you're interested, because it's highly unlikely, not never, but highly unlikely that most of us are going to be telling you, oh, yeah, you should use Apoquil or use Cytopoint or use antibiotics or use steroids or, let's give a bunch of vaccinations, annual shots you don't need, or, carry flea and tick poisons. And I would encourage you, if that veterinarian has a website, go to their website. If they are recommending or if they are promoting National Dental Month, I promise you they're not a holistic veterinarian. If they are promoting vaccinations and dental cleanings every year and flea and tick poisons, etc., then please assume they're not holistic. But I will put a qualifier in there just a little quickly, because on my website, I had one new patient go on my website and see at the top of the page that there was a link for pharmaceutical. And she freaked out and said, "Oh my God, well, I thought you were really holistic." And I said, "Well, I do have some clients that would like to use heartworm prevention. So, yes, I have an online pharmacy, but no, I don't allow because I have to approve everything. Like if you go on to my pharmaceutical link
Right.
to the online pharmacy and you want to order like Bravecto or something, I'm not going to approve it. So
Right.
you won't get it."
Right.
But, maybe you don't know that by looking at my website. She said, "Okay, well, if you're sure," she was so nervous. And, but
Probably because she's come up against these holistic vets and she's probably like, oh, here we go again.
yeah,
Here we go again, so it
but
can be.
if you go on my website, you're not going to see me talk about, annual dental cleanings and, things of that sort. So look over the website. And a lot of vets will have pharmaceutical sites, but if they're promoting and going, yeah, see, you need your monthly, heartworm and, come on in and we'll get you all up to date on your vaccines. And, oh, by the way, we offer acupuncture. It doesn't mean they're a bad vet, but they're an allopathic veterinarian. Let's just call it what it is. You can call it integrative and make it sound a little more pleasant if you'd like, but that's not a holistic veterinarian. It's an allopathic veterinarian, period. That's
Right.
it.
The point of the article that I'm writing is I want people to walk into whatever vet they're walking into with, knowing what they need and want, like knowing that I have to take responsibility for everything that goes in and out of, my dog and my cat and what I'm doing, and not just shut down because you think they're holistic. Really quick, before we get to these questions, I'm just wondering, has anyone heard the commercial for Apoquel, the new one? I don't know if it's playing across the country, but at least here in California, the drug companies clearly think we're stupid Californians. I don't know if the rest of the world they've considered stupid,
We
but
have it in Florida too. We have it in Florida also.
so the new Apoquel commercial actually, I'm quoting, I swear, it says may increase illnesses for patients with pre-existing cancer. Does that even make any sense? Because that the FDA told them they have to start labeling it because they know it causes cancer. That's
Correct.
how they got around it. They got
Yep.
around it by saying pre-existing cancer.
Right.
So now if your dog gets cancer, they get to go, oh, it was pre-existing.
Yep.
We're all pre-existing cancer at this point. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is so.
Every day we create.
I was so pissed.
Yeah, well, look at all of the pharmaceutical or pharmaceutical, on television.
You guys catch that?
May cause cancer, may cause immunosuppression, may cause death, and people will still ask their doctors for these medications. You can't save the world from themselves, but the veterinary world is having to do the same thing with Apoquel. They just dressed the comment up as best they could dress it to make it sound more palatable so that you may actually acquiesce. And there are still veterinarians that are telling people that Apoquel is perfectly safe.
Oh, sure.
And I don't need to pick on that drug. Pick on Cytopoint if you want to, or, pick on any of them if you want. I mean, there's 3 chemotherapy drugs on the market. And of course, Apoquel is one of them. And they're all immunosuppressive. It's just another dressing. I would rather see an animal get steroids than Apoquel or Cytopoint.
We've talked about Temerol P before. I'm like, I don't understand. I think they just don't carry it, because I would rather, I'm obviously not a vet, but I've seen what's happened on the Apoquels and the Cytopoints, and I never saw those effects when we were doing Temerol P back in the day when we would give that, but they just don't use it anymore.
Well, yeah, a lot of vets don't use it. It's an old drug. And,
I know, but it's the one that worked.
Well, yeah, until it doesn't. I
think it should only be used until we figure out the problem, but something.
Well, what I always tell people is remember that your pet is not going to die from itching, scratching, or even causing hot spots. To me, a drug medication or a determination of the use of a drug medication should be based solely on the fact that this is a life-sustaining medication. If you have a patient or your pet is elderly or has been undergoing a lot of allopathic care, maybe they have active congestive heart failure, and I mean active, because another thing that makes me absolutely nuts is veterinarians hear a heart murmur and they immediately put dogs on Lasix and enalapril and pemibendin, or I can't remember the other name for it, but anyway, immediately. Now, those are heart failure medications. They don't slow the progression of heart disease. They're just drugs stuck on. If you're thinking about heart medication, get an echocardiogram done, for heaven's sakes, from a cardiologist. Know what you're dealing with. Don't acquiesce to putting your animals on these drugs because they, quote, say it's going to slow the progression of heart disease. Those are heart failure drugs. That's what they are. They're heart failure drugs. They are not, I have a heart murmur and some heart insufficiency. They are heart failure drugs. That makes me nuts. But if an animal is on life-sustaining medication for active heart failure, or a patient comes to me and they have serious seizures, cluster seizures, I'm not going to tell them, okay, you came to the homeopathic holistic veterinarian, now you have to stop the Keppra or phenobarbital or potassium bromide or whatever. The goal is to begin working with that patient homeopathically, doing the best that I can, looking for signs of improvement where we can thereby begin reducing the medication. That may be possible in a congestive heart failure case, or it may not. So life-sustaining medications, I won't necessarily take the patient off forever, but we'll try to get to the lowest possible sustainable dose for them, to make them comfortable, because I get news for you. All of those drugs have a disease they cause themselves, which is politely called side effects. And I've mentioned this before in the podcast, but understand the side effects is just a polite word for the disease the drug causes.
Right.
And almost all drugs will have diseases associated with them that causes, those are called the side effects. And apical, one of them is cancer. Not pre-existing cancer, but cancer.
I can't, I'm like, damn it, I'm so mad. I can't, I'm like, my husband even, because he knows, don't watch TV with Carrie because there's a good chance there's going to be a commercial coming up. But
Yeah.
he caught it. He was like, did you hear that? I heard
the volume off on the commercials when they're about to come on. He's probably saying, oh my gosh.
Dee wants to know, can you explain TCVM versus homeopathic?
Sure. TCVM is traditional Chinese medicine, and that is based on Chinese medicine where acupuncture is involved, or Chinese herbal medicine. I do have Chinese herbal medicines behind me. I'm in my office this evening. I do some Chinese medicine, but homeopathic medicine is the use of really infinitesimal doses of medications or medicines that are so severely diluted that they won't cause any primary toxic or systemic reactions. It operates by energy. Acupuncture moves energy through the use of application of needles or taking specific herbs, Chinese herb formulations, where homeopathy is matched up to the individual animal's symptoms, which are not a disease, whether it's diabetes or cancer. Those are actually symptoms of the underlying imbalance. So what homeopathic medicine does by energetic means is it stimulates a healing response in the body if it is a medicine that is selected and most closely resembles the pattern that that patient presents with. Whereas Chinese medicine works a little bit more like allopathic medicine, where if you have diarrhea, for instance, you'll be taking perhaps a Chinese herbal medicine that helps bind you up, just like you might if you were going to take Imodium. Homeopathic medicine, we might use a homeopathic medicine that in a healthy person, not a sick person, but in a healthy person, if they took that medicine often enough, at high enough potency, with enough repetition, it would actually cause diarrhea in the healthy patient. So in homeopathic medicine, we're treating like with like, and that's why homeo means similar or same, and allopathic medicine is opposite or opposing type of medicine, meaning that I'm going to give you an anti-diarrheal herb or drug to help stop the diarrhea. Homeopathic medicine, in my experience, is the deepest, most profound healing, and it has no side effects whatsoever. Chinese herbs sometimes can have side effects. Animals could react to certain herbs. They don't often react adversely to acupuncture. And I don't always use homeopathic medicine and do a homeopathic workup. But when I do see a patient, I look at them from all aspects, which is very unique, or I think it's unique to what I do. So I look for Chinese patterns of heat, wind, coldness or worse by cold. I'll look at those from a Chinese perspective in the patient as well as a homeopathic perspective simultaneously. And sometimes I'll explain things to clients because traditional Chinese medicine is brilliant at explaining patterns of things, and homeopathy is brilliant at treating all of those patterns, in my opinion, better. So I do both, not often simultaneously, because they're both potent and powerful healing, energetic healing modalities. They can conflict with one another. The cases where I may use them together, which some of my homeopathic colleagues may not agree with, but I don't mind admitting to the things I do. If I have end stage cases or animals that have severe pain, severe degenerative arthritis, and if they have herniated discs or if they have torn ACLs, that's a cruciate ligament in the knee. I'll often use acupuncture at least for a period of time. In some of the chronic, really severe cases, I might use it more frequently, but I'll use it as pain management to try to help the animal while I'm also treating them homeopathically. Understanding there may be a little conflict between the two. It's not a big conflict. It isn't like using homeopathic medicine and allopathic medicine. That's like driving with the brakes on. Unless you're using a life sustaining medication that is appropriate to the animal's current condition.
Uh, Let me know if this is a good kind of analogy, how I picture homeopathy. I feel like because like treats like you're saying, is that we're giving a little bit. I feel like it's giving a little bit more to the body and forcing the body to respond quickly or faster. Like, okay, there's a little bit more in there. You got to do something. This isn't just a tiny little cold, whatever it is. It's more, and then the body responds to it. Is that fair? Like that's how I picture it
Well,
in my head.
yeah, there's actually some research that's gone into how homeopathic medicines physically work in the body. That had been an unknown for a really long time. One of the ways that Dr. Pitcairn explains it, and I don't know that that's truly accurate, is that and it could be, so I'm not trying to debunk him in any way. He certainly is a brilliant, brilliant man and probably knows more than I do. But anyway, he describes it as giving a medicine that actually creates an artificial disease in the body and displaces that natural disease. It displaces it and eliminates it. But the artificial disease you're giving the patient by giving the homeopathic medicine wears off quickly because it doesn't stay around in the body. We understand through physics and electron microscopy, I don't want to get too technical here, maybe a little bit too much. There are physical, like you can actually measure physical action in the homeopathic preparations because we haven't been able to do that until more recently. And I don't believe it actually works in the way that nanoparticles work or targeted therapies like targeted immunotherapies and things like that. But they're trying to ascertain if there's something along those lines for which homeopathic medicine may work. Because as far as traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, we understand that putting the needle in creates an inflammatory reaction at the site where we inserted the needle, and it creates a little inflammation. The body goes, "Whew, I got to pay attention to this, particular site for which I inserted the needle," and then the body works to resolve that, and it opens block and stuck channels and helps better flow through the body, etc. But when you think about it, we talk about in Chinese medicine qi, and in homeopathic medicine we talk about life force. They're pretty much the same thing. The Chinese just looked at things a little bit differently than the homeopathic individuals did in understanding health and disease. And those very, very dilute substances that we use in homeopathic medicine doesn't have any physical measurable particles in it, but the Chinese herbal medicines do. And so if we talk about chi or life force, they're very much going to be the same thing. Like you have so much energy in your body, and if you have enough energy, we can stimulate that energy and we can cause some healing to occur. That's the goal when we're doing acupuncture. It's the goal when we're doing homeopathy. My experience has been being trained in both, that homeopathic medicine is more profoundly effective as far as treating and curing more cases of difficult diseases or even more minor diseases than acupuncture and herbal medicine is. But that doesn't mean we should dismiss it. And that's what I said all along in the midst of COVID. It's like, let's get all our brilliant minds together because we have a lot of things we can choose from. that we can use, because homeopathy may work brilliantly for the majority of individuals, and there may be certain cases that are just going to respond better, or people respond better for whatever reason to Chinese herbs and acupuncture, or maybe to both. Who can say for sure? We have these tools available to us, but the distinctions are really clear because they act similarly, and then they act a bit differently. Because remember, your Chinese herbal medicines are going to be a physical substance that you can actually measure. The homeopathic medicine is so dilute, there's no physical substance left. It's an energetic formulation in a pilule, or in a liquid if we liquefy the homeopathic medicine. And we can't say, oh, well, it's a placebo effect. That's rubbish. Animals don't know they're being given a homeopathic medicine. So if they get better and they stop itching, or the tumor begins to disappear, nobody said, I'm giving you a magic medicine, Fifi, and your tumor is going to go away. And Fifi said, oh, goody, and then took that magic medicine. They don't know. They just would give them stuff, and whatever happens, happens. Maybe
Right.
in a person, things could be suggestible, because we all understand that prayer, mind, therapy, and distance healing, we all acknowledge that those things are helpful and effective long distance for people. So why is it so far-fetched to think we can give a homeopathic medicine that has literally no measurable substance left in it, because it's been so dilute that it would have no ability to create any kind of healing response in the body?
So somebody had asked how. I know Dr. Picarin's website has quite a few. Dr. Picarin does is he still doing the classes in Sedona for vets to go? I don't know.
He is doing, to my knowledge, I think he is still doing the advanced veterinary homeopathy course.
Okay.
He did turn over the course for veterinarians, the initial or basic course. I believe he turned that over to some other individuals. I'm not sure how well that's going. I hope it's going well, because we need more veterinarians to dive into homeopathy.
Well, I know that if you go to Dr. Picarin's website, Lori will find it, I'm sure, and put it up for you guys. He has a list of all the vets that have gone. I know Dr. Canizero is listed on his website. He has a list of a lot of veterinarians that have gone through his course to learn how to do homeopathy. So he lists those vets. That's your best bet to go there. But I swear there's not very many of them.
Well,
So
you also can go to the Academy of Veterinary Homeopathy, which is the THEAVH.org. And there is a list of veterinarians in your state. And some of them will do remote or phone consults, some won't. But usually they will identify if they will or they won't, and be willing to drive. And I see Dee said she's only 2 hours from me. That's really not far. I have clients.
2 hours is not bad. I could go 20 minutes from here and it can take me 2 hours.
Yeah, well, there you go. I know exactly. It's not bad. I think I had somebody come the other day that was 2 hours away.
Yeah.
But I've had clients come from other states, Texas and Louisiana and Alabama and Georgia, and they'll come from there. The nice thing is we can do work by telephone homeopathically. We can't do acupuncture and Chinese herbal. Well, Chinese herbs you can, but I can't do acupuncture or spinal adjustment, which is better known as chiropractic, or blood work or anything like that. I'm a rare homeopathic veterinarian in that I do offer blood work, some specialty testing, cancer screening testing, osteoarthritis screening testing, some standard testing, heartworm test, fecals, urinalysis. I don't do surgery, x-ray, or hospitalization, intensive care, or anything like that anymore. I refer out for any of those things. But many homeopathic veterinarians only do homeopathy. That's it. They don't do anything else. No supplements, no nutraceuticals, no acupuncture herbs. They don't do any of those things. Adjusting. They just refer you out for any of those other things if they choose to do that.
So I know that you can go to Whole Foods, which is interesting, right? You can just go to Whole Foods and you can buy homeopathic medicines there.
Yeah.
But is there is there a difference? I know Dr. Picarin told me a lot about just buying that stuff at Whole Foods and these kind of places, because he says a lot of them say you have to take it for a long period of time and kind of he says that's not even homeopathy.
Right.
So where would someone if somebody?
I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that's super important. First of all, I'll keep it a little bit simple. If you could find a homeopathic veterinarian to work with, I would recommend you find somebody and not try to treat on your own, because you wouldn't like treat on your own and not go to the allopathic vet. So find a homeopathic vet and treat, because chronic diseases are just not really simple. Dr. Pitcairn's book does have a little cookbook recipe, and Dr. Hamilton's book, I can't remember the full name of that, but that's referred to on my website as well. Both of those books do have little cookbook recipes like, oh, if your pet gets stung by a bee, you can give this. And that's okay. You could do those kinds of things. And then if you needed, wanted, or whatever, if you're not working with a homeopath, you could go to the health food store and get the individual remedy. Let's say it's apis, and give that for a bee sting. I don't think you would really cause any harm. What I do take issue with is a lot of those tubes of remedies will say, give 3 times a day for 2 months or something like
Right. That's what he said. Yeah.
that. That is excessive. I mean, we don't use a potentized remedy like that on a 3 times a day basis. There are rare cases where I, and again, guided by me, will decide to use a remedy, maybe an acute herniated disc, the animal's in tremendous pain. I might take a potency and have them use it 3 or 4 times a day. But that is not going to be for 3 or 4 months at a time. That might be for a couple of days. And in the case of trying to treat yourself, don't keep repeating the remedy. If you've given the homeopathic medicine a couple of times and it hasn't helped, you don't have the right remedy. You need to work with a homeopath to figure out the right remedy. And then the other thing is that I take enormous issue with, and I know Dr. Pitcairn does too. This came up in a phone appointment I had today with a client of mine, God bless her. She was frustrated because her dog had urinary leakage. And instead of calling me and saying, you know what, the urinary leakage isn't getting better with the homeopathic medicine you prescribed, because I actually have really, really good success with incontinence with homeopathic treatment without the use of any drugs at any time. And so, anyway, she bought Leaks No More from a homeopath off of Amazon. And she said, oh, it's great. It really reduced the urinary leakage. Well, that might sound good on the face of it, but unfortunately, it's a homeopathic preparation. It's not a homeopathic medicine, really. They took about 4 to 6 homeopathic medicines in 2 different potencies, 6C and 30C, which 30C is a reasonably high potency. And then she's been giving this whole combination, it's all mixed together, and she's been giving this 2 times a day for, I don't know, a couple of months. Now she decided to give it every other month, every other day. And I said, whoa, hold up. You're giving us, do you realize the 6C is one thing? One, mixing a bunch of homeopathic medicines together is a company's attempt to utilize homeopathic medicines in a non-homeopathic way. In the same way that if you guess at a remedy or read the little label on the tube, if you go into the health food store, it might say, oh, this is good for hangovers. Well, I got to tell you, there's about 1,000 remedies or more that are good for hangovers. It just might be that Nux vomica is a particularly good one for hangovers for the majority of individuals, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody with a hangover. But they can only put a 1 sentence, label, basically for usage on the tube. And so people will go, oh, goody. Well, every time I have a hangover, I'm just going to keep taking this.
How
And
about
you want to work with a homeopath to help guide you, because while they are not dangerous to use, you could cause delay of proper intervention, which we complain about all the time, right? Like allopaths complain about us. Oh, don't go to a homeopathic vet because then you're going to delay, appropriate.
Oh, you guys are crazy.
So
that's what I heard.
Oh yeah. Well, they think we're nuts and we use magic water and, wave wands and things. I don't know what they think of us. I'm not really sure. There's vitamin water.
Magic wands.
Yeah. It's just, it's a fairy wand and, we just do that kind of thing. So, really work with a homeopath, and please don't use those combination remedies, because if it does work, I said to my client, how do you know which one of those remedies in that bottle is even helping?
Can you imagine mixing a bunch of antibiotics in a bottle?
Well, that's what they're doing essentially.
Little amoxicillin, little Cravamox, little of this.
Antibiotics that will kill E. coli, and I'm going to put them all in one bottle, and here, let's give it to your pet.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that you have nowhere to go, because eventually, because that works like allopathic medicine, when it stops working, which all allopathic medicines eventually stop working or helping, then where do you go from there? If I have a well-chosen remedy that really helps your pet with urinary incontinence, but then it stops helping, I can say, okay, I know that Fifi responded really, really well to lycopodium. I'm going to look for a remedy that's related to lycopodium because that's probably going to be my next reasonable remedy that I need to go to, provided that it is homeopathic and fits your pet's case. So unless you're getting your pet worked up, if someone's just pulling a remedy off the shelf and, oh, take this, give that, or they're a whole bunch in a bottle, you're not doing your pet any service. So I begged her, I said, well, do you think maybe you could stop giving that and let's go back and do this one homeopathic medicine and kind of get a reset and get a feel for whether or not this is going to forward. And I wanted her to give it just a little bit more aggressively, like a once a week, a 30C once a week. Now that's still pretty aggressive, but I want her to do that for the next 4 weeks or so, because then we'll see if the skin problem and the urinary incontinence, we're going to see if that touches it. And if so, how much, because the anal gland leakage has all but cleared up. So I know that that homeopathic medicine we gave did something. And I don't know what that leakage thing or leak no more or whatever the name of that is, but I don't really know. It did quote unquote appear to help, but so do steroids for itching. Yeah. It really isn't much different. So don't use them, please.
It's interesting what people think works. You know, I mean, metronidazole. I always bring this study up because it makes me laugh. I told you metronidazole did it. They did a study on metronidazole and found that if your dog has diarrhea and no other symptoms, if you've heard me say this, I'm sorry, but it makes me laugh every time. If you give a metronidazole, it'll clear up in 3 days. If you do nothing, it'll clear up in 3 days. So I have people who just think that's the answer. So like they'll come in for boarding, and then when they get home, the dog has a little diarrhea because he's had a little nervous tummy. So then they give him metronidazole, and of course it clears up in a couple of days. So now but I'm like, it'll probably clear up on its own. Why didn't you just give it the 3 days? Just give it the 3 days.
Or why not buy some slippery elm bark?
Anything other than metronidazole.
I actually had a client that came in, and it was astounding how much metronidazole was dispensed. And she said, oh, I keep it on hand all the time because, you know, about every month or two, my dog gets diarrhea. So then I just go ahead and give it. Remember that metronidazole is an antibiotic. And if you know anything about antibiotics, it's going to decimate the gastrointestinal system. And I don't know why veterinarians seem to think that diarrhea always equals an overgrowth of bacteria. There's all kinds of causes for diarrhea. There's dysbiosis, there's imbalance of flora. You might have a lack of flora. You may have overgrowth of bacteria. The only time metronidazole, if it would ever work, which I would argue in your case, what you said is true, is that if you had overgrowth of bacteria, then yes, maybe. Okay. Most of these cases are not overgrowth of bacteria. There's dysbiosis, there's inflammation. There is something other than overgrowth of bacteria. So antibiotics are completely not indicated. And then you've decimated the gastrointestinal tract. And then I promise you, just like the flea and tick medicines, you'll get to keep using it over and over and over again because you've damaged the patient. The patient's more attracted to fleas and ticks, or the gut is so damaged that it flares up again or explodes, the next little thing that causes the explosion. No pun intended, folks. And then you're back to using these medications over and over and over again. So you are certainly lining the pockets of the pharmaceutical companies, I'll tell you that.
I would put money, if I could see a graph of sales for metronidazole, that if we looked at every month, that you would see an increase of sales on July 5th, 6th, and 7th. The metronidazole probably go, and you guys all know why? Because on July 4th, the whole world got nervous. All the dogs got nervous. By July 5th, 6th, and 7th, I bet the metronidazole rates would skyrocket. Mm-hmm. Because vets are so busy on those 3 days after. So
and get some 5-flower formula, which is a organic formulation of Rescue Remedy, and pick up some slippery elm bark. And if you need some information on how to administer that, you can reach out to me. That's perfectly fine. I'm happy to share. Yeah. Somebody asked how to keep their dog's joints healthy.
Yeah,
they asked about turmeric or omega-3. What I'm going to say to you is the best way to keep the gut healthy, the joints healthy, and the whole animal healthy is diet. You can spend all the money you want on supplements. It's not going to fix the ravages if you're feeding crappy food. It's sort of like saying, well, I took my vitamins, but I'm still smoking. So take it seriously. The diet makes a difference. And I recommend Dr. Pitcairn's recipes, Natural Health for Dogs and Cats. It's in his book, in that book. And the newest recipes are vegetarian and vegan recipes. There's a ton of reasons. Somebody else asked, how do I keep inflammation down in my dog's body? Feed a vegetarian or vegan diet. Dr. Pitcairn's recipes I would recommend. If you are uncomfortable feeding vegetarian and vegan, then you can intersperse. And I'm not a Nazi. Like I had a client today that I said, I'm uncomfortable with your dog's weight. I'd like you to feed some eggs, and you can feed some animal protein or whatever. So, it's okay to intersperse, but I would like you to think about feeding as much as you can. And people say to me all the time, it's too expensive. I can't afford the meat-based diets. Fine, feed a vegetarian vegan diet. I promise it's cheaper. It'll take you a little bit of time, but it's cheaper.
I was kind of reading this about she wishes there was more homeopaths. I know that Dr.
Me
Canizero,
too.
I know Dr. Canizero can do that. That's why I'm saying you may not be able to walk into office and see a homeopathic veterinarian because there just simply are not even, what is there, like 10 probably in the country, I feel like, that actually are doing a really good job of it.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more, but go and see your allopathic veterinarian and then get whatever you need and then call Dr. Canizero or one of the other ones. It's hard. It's
I want to address something, and it says Facebook user, so I don't know who this is, but it's on what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think this really is an important thing to drive home. A lot of people, when they call a homeopathic veterinarian, are not accustomed to getting charged by the hour. And immediately their brain kind of swells and says, oh my God, that's too expensive. It's out of reach, because somebody mentions that here. Generally speaking, we are less expensive than the allopathic veterinarians, and I can safely say that now in today's time. I don't know if that was or wasn't true 20 years ago when I first started doing this. I'm not really sure. I also, prices have gone up, et cetera. But your first appointment is always the more expensive appointment, because we're going to go over, or most of us should, if we don't, I go over all the medical records, all the doctor notes from as far back as you've had your baby for. I go through an entire case taking. I want to know everything impactful about your pet, what led up to the primary complaint. And I want to know every little detail about that primary complaint. That takes time. I promise you, I'm not going to see you in 15 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes. The other thing I want to draw your attention to, it depends on where you are in the country. Around where I live, to my knowledge, the veterinary exam visit is anywhere from a low of $45 to usually somewhere around $75. Sometimes it's $90 to $100, just depending on where you go. The clinics are a little bit different. I don't know about you, but if you do the math and you see the veterinarian for 5 minutes instead of an hour and a half, my new patient appointments are an hour and a half. And if you see the vet for 5 minutes, do the math. $100 divided by 5. I promise you're paying much more per minute than you are paying with me or any other veterinary homeopath.
for sure.
So bear in mind that even if my rates are a little over $4 an hour, $4 a minute, excuse me, that'd be pretty bad. If it's $4 an hour. Even though you're paying far more, like $10 or $15 a minute to see your vet, and then the rest is tech time or busy time. You're waiting for your fill of your drug or medication or whatever it is. And so you might be at the office for a half hour, 45 minutes, or you may have waited a half hour. I don't know. So maybe you're there for an hour, hour and a half, but I promise you never saw that vet for an hour and a half.
No way.
It did not go into the level of detail that we do. So it's so incredibly important, because people get sticker shock sometimes when they call to us homeopathic vets and say, that's unaffordable, I can't do it. I promise you. The other thing I want to say about that, when you choose homeopathic medicine pathway for well care for your pet, you will spend less money in veterinary bills. Think of it this way. I can't afford it. My prednisone prescription is only $15. The fallout, the disease the prednisone is going to cause, you've got the original disease that's progressing along, plus all the drug disease that's put on top of that. When the fallout comes and the kidneys fail or the liver fails, you'll spend more money on diagnostics and more medication to chase that problem. I promise you're going to spend more money. So it may seem cheaper in the short, but unless you like that quick fix, I don't care if it's short term. I don't care if my pet suffers more later. I'm okay with that. Unless you're that person, that kind of medicine is probably for you then. And it's okay. Everybody's different. That's fine. But
Yeah.
don't look at them on equal footing, because you're going to spend more money on an allopathic veterinarian. I promise. There will be surgeries, and there will be, well, if we keep vaccinating and we keep using drugs and nonsteroidal anti-inflammatories, then you're going to have an ACL tear. You're going to have a cruciate ligament tear. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a $7,000 surgery. So don't tell me that we're more expensive when I rarely, in my young animals to adulthood, I rarely see cruciate ligament tears and disc disease problems and terrible skin problems. All those things, if they ever occur, like skin problems, usually milder. That's not 100% of the cases, but I would say quite a lot of them. And so my clients are like, sometimes I have to tell them, please, you need to make an appointment with me 2 times a year. I just ask you 2 times. They're like, oh, my pet's fine. I don't need to see you. And I hear five years later. But don't do that either. I don't recommend, because it's always good for us to touch base and make sure we can tweak things, or things may change or whatever. I'm happy they're doing so well for 5 years' time, but please don't disappear for 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's true. I can't even believe how much, the trickle down effect is, and how much money people are spending going back and forth to their vets. But I see it. I see the bills coming in, and I'm like, oh my God, the money that is spent on these animals. And then I can go back from when they're puppies, and I can predict. I get the puppies come into me with their first set of everything that they're supposed to get, and they go home with their dewormer and their flea and tick medication, their ear cleaner, their heartworm medication put on them, this whole package of stuff when these puppies are only 2 months old. And I'm like, oh, I know exactly, this is going to be the most costly dog you've ever owned in your life. And it's because they set him up for total failure. The puppy's just been set up for total 100% failure. And it's hard.
There doesn't seem to be a consciousness in the veterinarians that more drugs is not better. I'm not terribly sure why that is the case, but now it's like, let's get them out the door with the most amount of stuff. But I will say that there are more companies that are coming in to coach veterinarians, because when I graduated from veterinary school, we had zero coaching on how to run a business. We didn't know. We didn't have a clue. Now there are companies that are specializing, and they're teaching veterinarians on how to upsell stuff. And and makes me cringe. And I worked at a practice, and this was 15, 18 years ago for a while. I didn't practice the way he did, but he owned the practice. And every new drug that came out, we used to have meetings where he would say, you need to make sure that, and he was telling the front staff this too, you need to make sure that the person leaves with shampoo and, heartworm prevention and flea and tick crap. And I remember when Program, the flea pill, came out. I know I'm dating myself, but when it very first came out.
And me, thank you, because I know what it is too.
Yeah. Well, now now they disguise it as Sentinel, so they combine it with ivermectin, heartworm prevention, so that you get the horrible flea drug, flea pill. Why would you want to give your animal something internally to kill fleas? Do you honestly think
I just had a client come to me. She was in tears, literally in my front office, just crying. She was so upset. She came into me because her holistic veterinarian, the dog had dog lice. For any of you guys who don't know what dog lice is, it is not the same as human lice. And they're little black. They look like fleas, but they're connected to the dog. They are so easy to get rid of. I would rather have a dog have that than fleas. I would rather have that than mange. It's really easy to get rid of. But her vet was insisting that she had to take the oral pill for it.
Oh my goodness.
And just insisting on it, that you have to do it. You have to do it. And this is a woman who is very afraid to give this to her dog. But the vet was telling her. And so she ended up on my plate. I'm so happy for both the dog and this owner that I was able to, and I knew what it was. Because a lot of groomers have no idea what it is. And they're like, oh, your dog has lice. Get out of here. Like they get nervous. But all I had to do was I did use a sulfur bath. And we just did one of them. And it's completely gone. And it was external. So this dog didn't have to put something in his body that was going to sit in his body for a month right? And I didn't even leave the dip on. We put it on, we let it sit on him for an hour, and then I washed it all off. Even though the label says to leave it on for like 3-4 days, I didn't even do that. That's how easy it is to kill those little things.
Yeah.
So I just let it sit on for an hour, and then I completely
Well,
washed
I
it.
tell you, those sulfur bass stink to high heaven.
Okay, this
Ooh,
is where I'm
stink.
weird. I like the smell of them,
You
but I
like
think
rotten egg smell?
I apparently do.
Ooh. Oh,
I
girlfriend.
You know why? Because I think that I know this is weird. I know this is really weird, and my staff thinks I'm weird too. But the only thing I can think of, because back in my vet tech days, I thought it was the most disgusting smell ever.
Yes.
But now I think my brain knows that it's healing a dog, and somehow, like, I'm like, it smells like healing to me. Like, I don't know. Like, if you guys haven't smelt it, my entire staff runs when they know that I'm doing one of those dips. But it worked, and he didn't have to use the damn toxic pill, and it's so easy to get rid
Yeah.
of. It's frustrating. It's so frustrating.
They go to the big guns a lot of times, and they just don't, they just don't reach out to something simpler. I mean, I would use something entirely different.
Dee says yuck, and I'm like, I swear I like the smell of it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Dee, you and I are absolutely on the same page because it's beyond nasty.
I do have to tell my front staff has to tell when I am doing those dips, and I use them. I use them for like when I've got like excessive paw licking. Sometimes I'll just do like a little bit of paw dip in case there's bad fungus. It kind of works when you've done nothing else is working. It's not like I have homeopathic vets out here. But I don't leave it on. Like, I don't do the whole like leave it on for days on end kind of thing.
Right.
But my whole front lobby will smell.
No, absolutely. That stuff it'll stink the whole place up.
Yeah, and then if a new client comes in, they're like, "This place stinks."
Oh my goodness.
No.
Cordell.
But it's great for lice. Let me just tell you, that stuff will kill lice in one shot.
It'll kill an awful lot of things. That's for sure.
I know. But she came back. I had her come back. I said, "Bring him back in 3 days. I just want to check him." And we looked, and nothing. How do you get the yellow out of dog fur? My coat. Oh, the goats look like a lemon. Okay. So this is crazy, but after I do a dip like that, I use a microbubbles machine, and it actually, because it's opening up the follicles, they don't go home yellow. And you might be using too much. You don't need that much. You need very little of it. The least amount possible. If you're getting yellow goats,
yeah,
which I want to see a picture of.
Yeah, I do too. Although I think you should make a design like hearts and things like that on the goat. Indeed, I treat goats also. I treat all animals.
Might be too much. You might be too much. There's a place in Tofino, Canada. I don't know if anyone's ever been there, but it's in Tofino, Canada, and they have this place called Goats on the Roof. And I thought it was a joke. And it was like this restaurant, and it was called Goats on the Roof. And we kept we're driving, and we kept seeing these signs for it. And I was like, let's go there. So we go, my husband sit down at the breakfast or lunch or whatever we were having. And I kept hearing stuff. I was like, oh my God, there are goats on the roof. I don't know anytime people talk about roads, I have been to that restaurant. Oh my God, really? Oh, yeah, it's called Goats on the Roof, and it's amazing. It's like a little they have everything. I kept hearing you're the only person in the world I know that's been to Goats on the Roof. And I didn't know anyone's even been to Tofino. Tofino is this tiny, it's actually on the way to Tofino, but it's a tiny little town in Canada. So I'm kind of surprised. So for my grandmother's 90th birthday, that's awesome.
Wow, that's awesome.
So this says, thanks, Kim. I am fortunate to work with human oncology MD. Oh, she's thanking Kim had written something about cancer. And the person that she's talking about, Tom, is amazing. I did a podcast with him several years ago. And I don't know if you know about this, Dr. Cannizzaro, but Tom is doing some research on cancer dogs. And he's really deep into it. So he's got a lot of really great information. He takes in a lot of dogs from rescues that have cancer, and then he's working with them. It's pretty amazing.
That's wonderful, and that's a great opportunity because it's a win-win situation for the
Oh,
animal. I
absolutely.
would tell most of your viewers that I would agree with Dr. Pitcairn that the vegetarian and vegan recipes are going to be most successful in cancer cases, because I do think that cancer is quite driven by the pollution of all of our meat-based diets. And the higher you eat on the food chain, the more concentrated genetically modified organisms you're consuming. So no offense, but we as humans are the most polluted because we are at the top of the food chain. And so hopefully nobody wants to eat us. That would be a good thing. Next time the bear is chasing you, remind them, oh no, I'm full of GMOs. You definitely don't want to eat me. You don't want to kill me. You don't want to eat me. You definitely don't want to.
Stay away from the Donner. Anybody with the last name of Donner, you might want to stay away from.
Yes, exactly that too. I would be curious whether or not these individuals are looking at or taking into consideration, because the old information was by Dr. Ogilvy, who is a DVM. I'm talking in terms of diet, because I know these folks are researching and doing a lot more than just that. But at the end of the day, you do have to ask the question, well, what do we feed, especially for cancer patients? And the discussion was no carbs. Well, that was the big deal, back in when I was learning anyway. That, oh good heavens, that was probably over 25 years ago, I guess. But anyway, they said, oh, Ogilvy diet, but nobody went to that either. It's almost like the veterinarians just sort of forgot, or they said, oh, I guess that book is, I don't know, outdated, or we don't care, or we don't want to know. Keep feeding your kibble garbage, or whatever it is. But it was all about carbs and how carbs drive cancer. But I want to clarify that it isn't just carbs; it's simple carbs. It is sugars. Somebody's saying Sandberg, I don't know who that is, does raw. Raw is okay, but again, when we talk about raw food, most of the time we're talking about raw meat diets. And I would challenge you that I think we see more allergies, more gastrointestinal issues that used to be resolved by feeding a whole foods diet or even raw meat based diets, but not so much anymore. And I will see more animals clear up better on high quality diets that do include carbs. But remember, they're complex carbohydrates. They're not the ones that convert easily to sugar. So that distinction is super important, because I don't think in Ogilvy's time they really made that distinction, because what's always been used in the pet food industry is just garbage carbs, things that easily convert to sugars.
Yeah. I just want to point out just really quick, it might be a typo, but Thomas Sandberg he's not a veterinarian. He's not a doctor. But you can put your dogs into his study as well. And he does stuff where he kind of guides you, but he's not a veterinarian. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Is he a PhD? Is that why someone's saying doctor? Or
unless you're talking about a different one, but if we're talking about Thomas, if we're talking about the same person.
Okay. Well, they have a link there.
He's in Utah, I believe, the one that I'm thinking we're talking about. I think he's in Utah or.
Okay.
I don't know.
Again, at the end of the day, I would work with a homeopathic veterinarian. And, diet alone is not going to fix the majority of the issues that we have. Neither will simple supplements. This is why I'm not a big fan of the eclectic veterinarians, the ones that offer spa type treatments and ozone. And I'm not knocking those therapies, or IV vitamin therapies. I'm not knocking those therapies. There are some good validity for doing those types of therapies, perhaps, but not every patient will benefit from it. Nor have I ever yet seen a patient that was cured by those therapies of whatever ailed them. I haven't seen that yet, but maybe it's because I see the ones that aren't getting cured, so they come and see me. Maybe that's the case, but I don't think so, because I'm not sure my colleagues could really stand up and say that either. The ones that are doing, eclectic stuff like that. I don't do ozone, but I'm sensitive to it, so I don't do ozone for that reason.
There's a class I'm actually going to be taking it coming up pretty quick here. It is going to be at the AHVMA, if anybody's interested, which is going to be in San Diego this year, and they are holding a 3-day class on. Which it's interesting that I'm going, because I can't use it in the terms that a veterinarian would use it, but it's an ozone class, and it teaches you how to use ozone. My purpose for going is because I want to learn more about it so that I can tell people, because you can do it on your own animals. If that's something that you want to learn about and do, you can do it on your own animals, which makes it a little bit more accessible because not all vets offer ozone either. So it's cheaper for you to do at home. So I'm going to be taking that class so I can teach you guys how to do it if that's something you want to do.
I want to put out a caution about ozone, and I've had my own personal experience with ozone. I have a torn meniscus in my knee, and long story short, I didn't want to have surgery. And I had an ozone injection in my knee, combined with prolotherapy, and we could talk more about what prolotherapy is. It was absolutely brilliant for helping my knee. I got systemically, seriously ill to the point that I almost died, actually. And I had a second injection. The first one wasn't quite as, fatal acting, but the second one was much more so. And I had PRP, which is platelet-rich plasma mixed with ozone. Again, it was brilliant for my knee. The pain was markedly improved, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to caution you because, well, after the second injection, I got very seriously systemically ill. But I didn't know at the time that that I had arsenic poisoning from my well.
Oh,
And
that's right. Yeah.
moving along and doing okay. And I only bring that up because I have seen a few cases where clients have come to me and they have said, well, I had the ozone therapy and my pet was seriously ill after that. Remember that depending upon how clean your pet is, feeding wise, vaccines, etc., it's entirely possible. Ozone is oxygen with an extra oxygen molecule attached to it, and it quickly becomes just oxygen and water in the air. So it's not very stable because it's a gas. And it's a very potent antioxidant. So I believe in my particular situation and what I've seen in some animals is that we could create a very potent detox cascade that is not in the animal's best interest, or the person,
Sure.
for this case, not the person. Then I was sick for about a year and a half, very ill. So I'm not suggesting that the doctor that, and it wasn't a doctor, it was a nurse practitioner that did the injections. I don't think they did anything wrong. It was how my body reacted to the ozone. And whether you do it by rectally or injecting, well, you at home wouldn't be injecting, but you'd be doing rectal insufflation. You might be doing it in the ear. If an animal can tolerate it, I think it probably is an excellent therapy for the ear, for chronic ears. A really good therapy. I don't have personal experience with it because I'm sensitive to ozone, obviously. So, I'll let other folks do the ozone therapy. It's not easy to do down in the ear, but it can be done. And it can be done rectally. So I'm not really feeling comfortable telling people, well, get your own ozone machine, which you could do. You could buy them even on Amazon. You can buy an ozone
Yeah.
machine. And you could buy the necessary tools and implements to do these kinds of things yourself. But if you get in trouble, what are you going to do? And when you go to your allopathic veterinarian and you tell them, well, I insufflated some ozone up my dog's rectum or my cat's rectum, and now they're like, you have to be hospitalized,
Yeah.
for example. I don't want to scare you about it, but that absolutely can happen. So
Yeah, it can.
people may be sensitive to ozone, such as myself. I had no idea. I didn't know.
Yeah. I think it would be best, I guess, when I get further along in my knowledge of it, what I would be probably recommending to people is to find a veterinarian that knows about it, that you can work with.
Right.
But sometimes you have these animals who have cancer and they're doing well on the ozone, but it gets so costly because you got to keep going back and going back and going back.
Well, if you have a proven track record, the good veterinarians that are providing ozone, just like those of us who use lasers and, and I don't use an Assisi loop, but, I like the technology, PEMF, I like all those technologies. And I don't, I'll tell clients, you can come in and spend money for me to laser your dog and I can get you started on this, but why not? There's lots of lasers out there. And while my laser is a really good laser, I mean, it's going to penetrate better. It's a very good laser. Lasers work. So even if you have an inexpensive laser, it may not work quite as well as my laser does, but it still works. So
Sure.
I have no misgivings. I'm like, go buy an Assisi loop or go buy a PEMF mat if you can afford it. The Assisi loop, I think, is around $300, but you have a very limited, I don't know, it's 300 applications or something. I don't know exactly. I can't remember. And then you have to throw it away and buy another one. The lasers should pretty much last forever unless they're just really crappy lasers and they have poor, poor customer support. I can't vouch for that because I just don't know. I just know the lasers that I use. So you can utilize those technologies, but once you have an establishment like with ozone or whatever, your pet's responding well to it, then why not invest in these things and do it at home?
Yeah.
I'm just suggesting that don't try to do it all yourself at home. Number one, we always said that, if you're trying to be your own doctor, you have a fool for a physician, right? So just beware that it's not the best idea to try to say, well, I got this. I'm going to go and treat my own animal. I'm going to use ozone. I'm going to use this. I'm going to use that, because you can get yourself in a lot more trouble. So, work with a homeopathic holistic veterinarian. I hope it will be helpful to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's 150 applications. I thought it was more than that, but I'm not surprised. The PEMF, all of those are similar technologies, PEMF and a CC. The CC loop, they're all good technologies. They work a little bit differently and they have a little bit different penetration levels. And there's different, because somebody's bringing up about a CC loop versus PEMF. And PEMF is just an electromagnetic field treatment. It's based on a magnetic field, magnetic pulsing. These technologies do work and they're all helpful. And just know that laser might work better for one patient. PEMF might work better for another. I tried the PEMF mat for my pain issues. I honestly didn't notice any difference. I didn't get any boost in energy. I'm not going to poo-poo the technology because I've seen other people get great benefits from it and animals get benefits from it. And if you can afford some of these things, the prices are coming down. You can get entry-level stuff that is somewhat affordable and will last you a while and is worthwhile. And especially for pain, I don't think you're going to cause any trouble buying things like this for pain management, especially if you get a low-level laser or red light. Be careful. Don't stick it in your animal's eye. That's really not a good idea for any laser or red light therapy product or whatever. We wear glasses. I put glasses on the animal if I'm going to be close to the face. So you do want to make sure you don't damage the retina, the back part of the eye, by using that.
You guys have been amazing at 6:15. So, and look at how dark it is behind Dr. Cannizzaro.
I know you like that. It's pitch black.
I know, it's like 9:15.
It is. It's not. Yeah, so it's 9:14 precisely.
So I'm gonna let Dr. Cannizzaro go, but you guys have been great tonight with all your questions and comments, and this is what I love, like where it ends up. I had no idea we were going to talk about ozone tonight, so it's just amazing that you guys are here and helping the community, because a lot of people might be secretly listening and not knowing what's going on, and it's amazing. So thank you guys all for listening and asking these great questions. It matters. And Dr. Cannizzaro, of course, without you, we wouldn't have been into all of these great questions and staying up late for us and stuff. So make sure, if you're looking for a homeopathic veterinarian, Dr. Cannizzaro can do fabulous. You can call her, you can do those kind of consultations with her, get the lab work or whatever you need from your conventional vet, and then you can work with Dr. Cannizzaro. Don't shut your brain off when you walk into your vet hospital. That's the whole thing.
Please be an advocate for your pet. Even if you walk into a holistic veterinary office, it's important that you pay attention, like Carrie said. And to answer, somebody was just going to say quickly, don't be put off by how expensive a beamer is. There are less expensive PEMF pieces of equipment out there that still are effective and still work. Don't feel like you have to have the $10,000 equipment pieces. You don't have to have that stuff to be beneficial for your animals. I bought an inexpensive online PEMF mat for my little arthritic dog before she unfortunately had to cross over. And, she loved it. She laid on it. She got benefit from it. She looked peaceful and comfortable. So, and I don't know, I think that thing cost me about $100. So, again, maybe $100 is too much, but, don't think you've got, I got to get both a $5,000, $10,000 beamer set up. You don't have to get all that stuff. It's not necessary. Prices are coming down. They're knockoff things. Maybe they're not Cadillac top of the line. Maybe they're not as special as my laser is, but laser is laser. Laser works. So don't sweat that, and don't miss going to your veterinarian. But once you have an established treatment, then carry on and use some of these therapies. They're out there to help you and help your animals.
Good. So last little thing, Dr. Canizero, thank you so much. I will look at the laser costing devices. You are right. As a rescuer, we don't always have funds for devices. So she's going to look into it. So, all right, guys, Lori is behind the scenes. So I can't not say thank you to Lori for making sure she posts all that information for you guys. Dr. Canizero will be back with us. She, like I said, she's so free with her time, which has been really, really amazing. So I hope that enough will get you to, do a consultation with her. If you need anything, she's there for you. Support her as much as she supports the community. I think that's important that we all support each other as best we can. But for that, I just want to say good night to everybody. And Dr. Canizero, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And please, everybody out there, be patient too, because a lot of homeopaths, such as myself, I'm booking about 2 months out. I feel very, very blessed. I have amazing clients.
Yeah.
Don't be discouraged by that. Get on someone's schedule, whether it's mine or another homeopath. It's worth it. Don't get discouraged. If we're busy, then we must be doing something pretty okay. So we're worth waiting for. And you can get your needs met by your local or allopathic veterinarians until you're able to get in to see us. So don't be discouraged by that under any circumstances, okay? And Carrie, thank you. Without you, there wouldn't be a forum to be able to bring information like this to people. So thank you for your generous time too. And I love doing podcasts with Carrie. Love it.
I know it's so.
And Lori's amazing.
I know Lori always gets it set up for us. Real quick reminder, guys, I will not be on at all next week. I'm actually going to Yosemite, which is my sanctuary. So I'm going to be in Yosemite.
I'm so jelly. Yeah. Pictures.
I'll post some pictures. But if you haven't been to Yosemite, make it part of your list. Like, get it on your list. It is a very beautiful place, and the waterfalls are supposed to be amazing because we've had so much snowpack, and so I'm very excited. So I won't be on either Wednesday. Next Wednesday we won't be on. So but you can, if you're on Saving Pets, don't worry, everybody still can answer questions and stuff, and then I'll see everybody the following week. Okay. All right, everybody, have a wonderful
week. You have an amazing trip, my friend. Oh, that's so fabulous. Thank you, everyone.
Advocate, guys. Be your pet's advocate. All right.
Please.
Take care, everybody.
So much. Bye now. Thank you.